My name is Brett Boutwell. I'm a former board member of the Baton Rouge Blues Foundation, and I'm here with the guys of Cowboy Blues Revue, who are scheduled to perform today at the Blues Festival. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but I think we're going to get them to play some music for us right now.
I'm going to play at the Oyster Joint.
And tonight, they're going to be playing along with some other musicians at the Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar. Y'all have a time for that? At 5 p.m. So in the meantime, I'm going to ask some questions of these gentlemen, all of whom have a long and rich and storied history in the music of southern Louisiana, both the Lafayette area, southwestern Louisiana, Acadiana, and also over here to Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Before I begin, let me just introduce and maybe ask the gentlemen of the band to introduce them. But I'm going to start with perhaps the elder of the group, Mr. Paul Lilbuck Senegal here, who is, let's give him a round of applause.
Yeah.
How you doing, Lil Buck?
Fine. All right.
Well, thank you for coming all the way over here to Baton Rouge to play with us and bringing some of these fine musicians with you.
Yeah, but a hop, skip, and jump, bro.
This group, Cowboy Blues Revue, is something of a super group here of musicians, most of whom are based in Lafayette. Would you mind introducing some of your bandmates to us?
Okay. Right here we have Steve Riley.
Yeah.
Curly Taylor.
All right.
C.C. Adcock. Lee Allen Zeno.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Senegal, you've been making music in southern Louisiana since long before some of these folks were born, including myself.
Yeah, 60 years.
You've been doing it since the late 1950s, and we have had a lot of musicians over the years here at the Baton Rouge Blues Festival who have connections to some of the famous luminaries of Louisiana blues. You've shared a stage with many of them. You've shared a recording studio with many of them.
Yes, yeah.
Can you bring us back to life at Excello Studios in the 60s when you played beside some of those folks?
Yeah, but a bunch of people, heard me play, and by me being so small, I guess, and they wanted me to play with them. I knew what I was doing, though. And like Carol Fran, Katie Webster, people like that, and others I forgot, but getting old, but I had a good time with them.
Yeah. And when you first started playing music and making some money from it in Louisiana, where were those venues you were playing in? Was that outside of Lafayette, around Lafayette, or was that around Baton Rouge here, or where?
Well, all around Lafayette, it started on a corner at a paper route, sell newspaper, and people would give me the change. I put it in my guitar and run home and shake it out, Then I started playing a little club by the house called the One Stop, about four houses down from where I live. Then from there, we went to the Blue Angel Club. That's where everybody would go, Clifton Chenier, I played with him. That's where we started there. And there's that old man, Oscar, that had the Baton Rouge. I played them all. Yeah.
And your career took you from playing the blues in those venues and recording at Excello Studios to later touring all over the world with the master of Zydeco music, Clifton Chenier, in the 60s. Or was that 60s or 70s?
69. 69. I started in 69 with him, yeah. Played till 85, I think it was the last gig I played. He was sickly then, we wouldn't play too much.
And there was a long time when if musicians recorded on small independent labels in Louisiana or in other places, sometimes those records would get lost and people wouldn't hear them. These days, because of the internet, you can go and you can Google Lil Buck Senegal, and you can hear some hip music that this man recorded under Little Buck and the Top Cats, 1969.
Yeah.
Monkey in a Sack.
Yeah.
If anybody out there wants to hear some great music, Google Monkey in a Sack and listen to some funk. 1969, is that right?
Yeah, that's it, man.
Tell me about Little Buck and the Top Cats.
Little Buck and the Top Cats, we were like 15 in the band.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Buckwheat, Zydeco was my keyboard player, you know. And man, we played every prom in Louisiana, bro, I guarantee you. We did some playing, but we had the band to do it, you know. We lick for Jan Brown. You couldn't tell the difference between that band and, you know, really. We could have played some music, man. Yeah. And that 2 guys was older than me, and the rest of them was really young, 14 years old, 16, 18.
Yeah, and did you all do all the horn arrangements for that band?
What?
Did you arrange all the horn parts and everything
I
for
would
that
hum
band?
it to them, you know. Yeah, I would hum. I didn't know how to write, you know, music. I still don't know how to write music, but I could hear it.
Your long career took you through an album. The Buck starts here in 1999, produced by the late Alan Toussaint in New Orleans. Yeah. And that same year, you were inducted to the Louisiana Blues Hall of Fame. It seems like you've been everywhere and played with just about everybody in this state. Zydeco, blues, New Orleans, R&B, you name it.
Yeah, quite a few, man. I could start with just in New Orleans, you know, with Alan, Frogman Henry, Irma Thomas, Gene Knight, Mr. Big Stuff. Oh, man. But here in Baton Rouge, old man Henry Gray, I did 3 CDs with him. You know?
Yeah, and probably Lazy Lester at some point back in there at Excello, right?
Yeah, Lazy Lester, another one. I mean, man. And then we, like I said, we would meet all together. We would see all together. We'd talk about, let's go make a record. Let's go do this. Let's go practice it. And that's how it all got started for me. You know?
Well, I don't want to eat up too much time with talking, because to have musicians this good and this many of them sitting together on the same stage, I would love to hear some music. So, all right. So maybe you could introduce us a little bit to how Cowboy Stew Blues Revue got started, and then maybe you could convince the band to bring up some tunes for us.
Yeah, let's see something. Cowboy Stew?
Yeah, tell them how the band got started.
C.C. Adcock here.
The one right there?
He said if I kept hanging out at his house, we had to start making money. So I went and booked a gig. He said, no more free guitar lessons.
This is the very unromantic story of how most music gets made in the world, right?
Right. Little Buck and I and Lee Allen were playing in Buckwheat Zydeco's band. Yeah. And so we decided when we had some time off that we should play. We started a little Wednesday night thing in a place called Antlers in Lafayette downtown. And so we just went in there one night and played. Originally we had Nat Jolivet playing drums, and his cousin Larry Jolivet. But Lee Allen would come around, and over the years, Lee Allen's, we're all family. Curly's actually Little Buck's nephew. Yeah. And Steve's my father.
So listen, could we in Baton Rouge, could we kidnap y'all and take you from Lafayette, and then we could have Lafayette music, right?
Let me tell you something, man.
We could seed it.
Cowboy Stew started with Charles started. Every week he had somebody new to the house. Here come this one there. Shelton Saunier. You know him, the guitar player?
Yeah, the idea of Cowboy Stew at the beginning was we were touring so much with Buckwheat. We decided that we'd play every Wednesday night when we were at home, and we'd have different guests come and play with us. So all the different blues cats, Sherman used to come, Sonny Landreth used to come. We had Tommy McLean and Warren Storm and Curly, Steve, everybody come around and play with the band, you know.
Lil Bob,
of course.
John Hart,
who arranged those horns on that record you were talking about, was probably John. And just, you know, everybody. So many people have gone. Guitar Gable, King Carl, you know, Lonesome Sundown came around once, I think. I mean, it was incredible. So we just get to play, and of course, Little Buck. In a Zydeco band, you might get a couple of solos a night, you know, short solos. And to hear Lil Buck be able to just open up and hold court and just take it as long as he wanted over and over again is it was a real treat for me.
Well, it's a beautiful story of multi-generational music making and community. And I think that we would love to hear a little bit of it if y'all would be open to playing some for us.
Lord knows I'm only tired. I keep on trying. Lord, I'll make it somehow. You got it.
All right, thank you. I might turn now to Steve Riley. We just heard some fantastic accordion work there. Steve Riley, if those of you from Baton Rouge who don't get often enough to Lafayette might not know, is also one of the master musicians of the Cajun tradition in Lafayette, and with his own band, Steve Riley and the Mamou Playboys, and others, has long been active in the scene. Cajun music, the blues, Zydeco, these are different words. It sounds like they've got firm boundaries between them, but then the more people play the music, sometimes it seems like the lines start to bleed pretty closely in there, right? What's the blues to you as a musician who specializes in the accordion and who has a long history with Cajun music?
Well, there's a lot of blues in Cajun music. You just listen to the accordion playing of Nathan Abshire and Amadé Ordwin, and they put a lot of blues into their music on the regular Cajun accordion. And so, you know, I grew up hearing a lot of that. I mean, you hear it in the fiddle playing, it's in there, you know. I mean, Cajun music sounds the way it does because we've been hanging out with the Creoles for so many years. I mean, our music would sound like Celtic music otherwise. In the early 90s, though, I discovered Clifton Chenier. And before that, it was all about the Balfour Brothers and Cajun music. But I discovered Clifton Chenier in the early 90s. It's around the time I met Charles, and he turned me on to all this great Excello stuff. And so, you know, I dove deep into that and really loved it. And the second incarnation of Cowboy Stew came about around that time. Like Lil Buck said, we went back to his house and said, hey, can we get this band back up and going? And he agreed, and it was amazing for me to play with Lil Buck, who I was listening to on the records, you know, and John Hart, and it was so good, a great way for me to learn Zydeco and blues, and I still have a lot to learn.
Very humble. Well, in this band, I mean, often we don't hear straight-up blues band with accordion, and many people don't realize what a long, long history there is with blues music involving the accordion in Acadiana. How do you see your role in playing accordion in a band like this? Are you, when you're not soloing, do you see yourself as part of the rhythm section in the background playing chords? Or do you feel like you try to stay out of the way or try to get in there and mix it up? What's it like to be an accordion player in a band that other people would look and say, hey, this is a blues band?
When I'm not soloing, I see myself as a horn player, and I try to play horn parts, like John Hart did, and so many other great players, and just make it work as a horn behind what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll move around the band and talk to CeCe Adcock a little bit, another musician from Lafayette who's been involved with lots of different projects, and most recently with a Little Band of Gold, and with Lafayette Marquis, that I think many people have heard of around these parts as well. Your history with these guys, how did you come to know Little Buck Senegal?
I remember as a teenager, like Steve, listening to Clifton Chenier records and seeing his name on the back and hearing these badass solos were just perfect for the song. And even more than that, the rhythm playing, this real syncopated way of, it was like funk guitar, soul guitar, but it was over blues. And it was always in a perfect place. It was real steady. And then, growing up in Lafayette, there was festivals like you have here today all the time. So you get to go out and, it was the 80s, and I was a kid playing guitar. And, you heard Little Buck play. You didn't need Eddie Van Halen. You didn't need any of that. You just see him, and it was like having a guitar hero in your hometown. Same with Sonny Landreth, of course, and Sherman Robertson at the time. A lot of great guitar players in Lafayette. We're known as an accordion in Fiddletown, unfortunately. But it's, tons of great guitar players over the years, Guitar Gable, and it goes on today, lots of great young guitar players. So that's how I first heard Little Buck, and then I made it my business, of course, small town, to get to kind of know him. But then I really got to know him when I got hired to play in Buckwheat Zydeco's band. And then that's when I started playing with Lee, who was the architect of that whole sound. And you go to rehearsals that would last sort of 17 hours.
and did you two tour together with Buckwheat Zydeco's
Yeah, and
band?
so, Lee was with Buckwheat, created that sound with Buckwheat since they were children. And then all the way through the end when Buck passed last year. But Lee Allen I started learning so much music from. I started learning how to put bands together and how a band can work, how a drum and a bass and a guitar and a horn. This man right here he's just an architect of sound and a great producer and a great band arranger. And so we'd go to rehearsal, and being the new kid in the band, I think they called me Spot at the time. But I was always getting a steady lesson from Lee Allen. And then about 6 months into me playing with the band, all of a sudden Little Buck shows up on the tour bus, which was a little ominous. It meant my days were probably numbered. But Buckwheat had a real subtle way of letting you know you were about ready to be fired. He just He just hired the best in the world to come and play in the band next to you all night long and intimidate you. But Buck was a sport about it, and he would hang out with me, and we'd hang out in the hotel rooms in the back of the bus and play cards and drink. And I mean, it's just looking back on it now, to have that kind of education. I was 18, 19. It was fantastic.
And you cut a solo album with Island sometime back then. Is that afterwards?
Yeah, right afterwards. Yeah, when I did finally get fired from Buckwheat's band. We all got fired that day. That's true. There was a day where we all not Lee Allen never got fired, but Buck and I both got fired on the same day. Of course, Buck was back in the band about 4 days later. I never was asked back, but I had to get to work, and I started making recordings, and so those recordings ended up ironically coming out on Island, which is the label that Buckwheat had been on, but there was really no connection. It just, if anybody knows anything about the record business, one thing doesn't lead to the other. It just happens every once in a while. So that was cool, because then I got to make my own record, but on that record I was heavily pulling from Little Buck. I remember we'd be recording, and I'd go by Little Buck's house and play him some of the stuff, and what would you do on this? You know, and he's always been so easy about sharing stuff and opening up. It's just really a beautiful thing.
Lee Allen, Zeno, is your experiences mostly been with Zydeco music in your career?
No, not really. Come up playing the blues, you know, with my brother and my cousin Harold.
And was that in Lafayette?
I was in Lafayette. Played my first gig. I was 7 years old, man. I was playing guitar. Couldn't solo, play chords, you know, rhythm.
Could you hold the instrument?
And yes, I did. And they had to escort me on the stage, and then when they take a break, they'd bring me in the kitchen in the back. In case something happened in the place, they wouldn't gonna be responsible for the little kid in the place, you know. So that's how that all took place. And my first paying gig was a knee-high strawberry soda and a bag of Lay's potato chips.
That's what you get tonight.
That's what I'm getting tonight. All right. Bring back memories, yeah. Yeah, but I enjoyed it, you know. And then when I first heard Little Buck and the Top Cats, my brother and I, we used to go listen to them rehearse at a club where I used to live in Carencro, called the Rock and Roll Club. And I couldn't get in there, so we go watch them practice. I stand up on a bucket through a window and watch them practice, you know. And these guys had some serious rehearsals. And I always told my brother, I said, one day I want to be like that. I want to be that professional, you know. Yeah, so.
Well, I wonder if maybe enough time has passed that we ought to ask for Cowboy Stu Blues Revue to play something else for us. Yeah? Well, I still hope to get to Curly Taylor and talk a little bit about that, and the poor man doesn't have any drums in front of him, so.
Well, I'm going to give this mic to Curly.
Why don't you pass the microphone?
There you go.
Oh, I think I have one.
Yeah. Oh, he's
Thank
got
you.
one.
I got buckaroos.
Okay,
Yes.
women are going to start swooning. Women are going to start swooning and
They're not-
fainting
Yeah.
as soon
They're
as
not
Curly
here.
starts talking. So you might want to get some medevac right here. Go ahead, baby.
That's a bag of potato
Smooth
chips. I'm
operator
paying
right
in for
here.
that tonight. Yes.
So, Curly Taylor and Zydeco Trouble?
Yes.
Still going strong?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Trying? Yeah.
Trying.
Yeah, and how's that experience compared to playing with these guys in terms of musically, what you find yourself doing? How is it different? How is it similar?
Well, just riding out here today, it takes a whole lot off of my back.
Yeah.
I pick the guys up. Normally, I'm driving my guys. I pick the guys up and I hand it over the keys, and I ain't sit in the back of my van, you know. And I'm like, y'all take over, you know. So it takes a load off of me from, you know, carrying everything on my back. But it's cool, you know. I came up as a drummer, playing drums in my dad band, Jude Taylor, and then start meeting these cool cats. Well, I always, you know, knew my Uncle Buck, but they were always a whole lot older than me, so I wasn't able to play in that band yet. And then once I got old enough and I was able to play in the clubs and everything, and they heard me play, and They said, you know, we like what you do, so they invited me to join this super group.
Yeah,
Super guys, though, man.
the super guys.
The super guys.
Well, all right. Do you think the super guys could play something else for us?
Go super guys.
It's on me.
Go see.
That was when you have the accordion.
Yeah. Play the blues bar.
You want to do Kalinda, maybe?
Kalinda, 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 quasi cani vel swa, ma venne io lo swa, una plita pridombe. Kalinda, 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 quasi cani vel swa, ma venne io lo swa, e la plita pridombe.
I don't know how much time these guys have here, but as long as they're willing to talk to me, I'm going to keep talking to them. Can you tell me a little bit about the tunes that you like to play with Cowboy Stew Blues Revue? I mean, what motivates you to choose a tune to play? Is it every band member kind of contributes, or do you have some kind of guiding theme in what you choose to play in the band? Just play what you want, huh?
When I first came around Buckingham, they had this repertoire, that they've been playing in the neighborhood for years, that they knew worked with people around Lafayette. So that was cool to learn all that. And then Lee writes songs, Lil Buck writes songs, really not known well enough, I don't think, for some of the great songs he's written and we'll play later this afternoon. And then for me, it was, because it was the early 90s when we started the band. It was before the digital age. And so as a young guitar player, I wanted a band so that I could sort of show off all the hip tunes that I knew that maybe other people didn't know. So I was always bringing these old crazy tunes to the band, all the old blues record stuff, and Buck would be like, man, I always want to play with the messed up chords and messed up time, and then all those Excello records that you know, I was really into those records, so I wanted to kind of sound like that. And Lil Buck was like, man, let's just play some James Brown or something. And it's going to work a lot easier than that. So anyway, that's how we started picking the tunes. And then, you know, we'd write some sometimes too.
You know, we could just sit down for 20 minutes and we could put a show together right quick.
Yeah.
Right quick. I mean, we could.
Well, this much musical experience in one band, I can believe it.
Eye contact, and you knew exactly what's going on. You know, if I do, don't go there.
Yeah, Cowboy Stu is kind of like Curly was talking about, taking the pressure off. You know, when you're with Cowboy Stu, it's kind of like, it's like being in a big old fat Cadillac on a Sunday afternoon taking a Sunday drive, because you just can lay back and everybody can pull their weight, and you can just chime in every once in a while and play a little something, and then every once in a while, a little Buck will look at you and nod, and then you get to do your thing and hope he don't frown.
While you got the microphone, CC Adcock, let me ask you a question based on your experience and other folks in the band. Swamp pop, swamp blues, these are terms we hear a lot. I wonder, you know, you mentioned the Excello Studios. Some people associate the sound of the Excello Studios and some of those tracks laid down in the 60s with the concept of swamp blues. What does that mean to you? What do you associate with the sound of blues coming from southern Louisiana rather than blues coming from Texas, other places?
It's funny because we were talking about this before. This morning we met at Little Buck's house on St. Charles Street in Lafayette and just kind of hung out, and it was rainy and waiting kind of to hear what was going to happen. We started talking about Excello and J.D. Miller, who owned Excello and who was the producer. He owned Excello Records, is a label out of Nashville, but J.D. Miller had a recording studio in Crowley and would license a lot of his records, and those are kind of known as the Swamp Excello records. And he definitely, the musicians down here, just like musicians anywhere, they sound like where they're from. Where the Texas thing was a little slicker and a little tougher, had a little bit more sting to it, had a little bit more twang to it. The blues that was made down here was real rhythm heavy, and had more of a, I think, more of a mysterious feel to it. And some of that mystery, you know, the swamp thing, I think J.D. helped really enhance that by using a lot of echo and keeping it real simple. The records were real simple compared to like a Gatemouth record or a Houston record, an early Johnny Watson record that had big horn arrangements, a little bit more sophisticated, the big city records, or even a New Orleans record that was kind of played by jazz guys playing rock and roll. J.D. stuff, his artist and the way they arranged it and the way he kept it was super simple dimple. And he would use echo to enhance sort of that lonely swamp feeling. And anyway, I think that was one of the main things that
Do you feel like that sonic atmosphere influenced you and your work, both in your own recordings, but
Without
also since you've worked as a producer and have helped produce the work of others? I wonder if it's affected you at all.
Yeah, without a doubt. And realizing early on that the recording of the record added a thing that was, if not enhanced, sometimes even equal to the performance. That, you know, having a vocal with a lot of echo on it, or using a skull or a box top instead of a drum set, would end up adding this mystique or a vibe to the record that you can't even really reproduce when you're live playing it on a stage. So yeah, there was definitely a production thing that I thought was hip about those Excello records. And then I learned later on, I found out that, you know, it was a lot of it was just happenstance. You know, I don't think anybody was overthinking it. In fact, the reason there's box tops and skulls and percussion and shakers on a lot of the Slim Harpo and Lightning Slim and Lazy Lester records and not full drum kits was simply because J.D., he'd have to pay for a musician to come in and play a drum set. It was X amount of dollars, whatever, $30.
Money.
But to be a percussionist on a session, it was $15. So thinking he wasn't gonna maybe have the best chance to make a bunch of money back on these blues records he was taking a chance on. Of course, they would go on to farm rock and roll and be covered by the Stones and the Kinks and everybody else ever since. He was kind of just finding a cheap way out. But I don't know. I wasn't there, but certainly sounded cool.
Well, while we're on that subject, since the history of Jay Miller's studio and the music that came out of it is so important to this region, I thought we might circle back around to Little Buck Senegal. And in these interviews, I see it as a form of oral history with some of the old masters of this music. And I love to hear any stories that people have to tell me. So I'm just going to mention some names. Slim Harpo, Katie Webster, Carol Fran, Lee Dorsey, Lazy Lester. These folks that you rubbed shoulders with, sometimes shared a stage with, sometimes a recording studio.
Yeah.
What kind of memories do those names, does it bring back any memories to you from the 60s, from your time around those folks?
Well, with Carol Fran, I did a lot of play with her in different lounges and stuff. And she was a funny lady, but she would say anything comes to her mind, man, And I would be ashamed sometimes. I was young. I would put my head down. She would say some bad things, but that's how she got over, And Lee Dorsey, I met him in Thibodaux, Louisiana, Jose Hill. We had a club over there, and we went to play the Top Cats. And he said, man, if you would play for me once a month, I'll give you one of them buses. He had a big 2 or 3 Greyhound bus. I said, who could drive that? We all some little bitty boys. We can't drive that, man. What are we going to do with that? He said, just pay us. That's all we want. Yeah. Yeah, and, now Alan Toussaint, man, when I met him, I got scared,
Now, like I mentioned, your 1999 album, The Buck Starts Here, produced by Alan Toussaint, but I assume that you had collaborations with him, or at least encounters with him that went farther back. When do you think you first met Alan Toussaint?
When I did my CD, matter of fact, Curly, my little nephew, played drums on it. Oh. And then I remember that time in, Milkman, the keyboard player, so we got in the studio. I knew Alan like that, but I didn't talk to him too much. He's strictly business, man. He walk in, he walk to the piano and just, he said, get somebody to come tune that piano. Somebody called somebody. And when he came in and tuned the piano, he got back to the piano and said, the little guy that was going to play piano with me said, Uncle Buck, you sure you don't want him to play? He got scared. I said, you know the songs, you're going to play. It's serious business. When you work with Al Toussaint, it's serious business. Bro. Yeah.
Back in the day when you were recording as a session man at Excello Studios, a minute ago, C.C. Adcock was talking about the payment back then. Did you get paid for your work at Excello?
I don't remember. We got paid with much, I just wanted to play, just be around them. Sometimes I would go to bring me, they wouldn't even let me play, but I would go anyhow, so just to be with the gang, Yeah.
Well, I think that we might have reached a point where in the last 5 minutes or so here that we've got the space reserved, I thought I might open it up to the crowd here in case any of those folks have questions for any of these all-star musicians from Southern Louisiana in Cowboy Stu Blues Revue. Any questions for the guys in the band? Yeah, might need to speak up. Clifton Chenier, yeah. Little Buck Senegal has a long history with Clifton
15
Chenier.
years with Clifton Chenier.
Yeah, what can you tell us about what Clifton Chenier was like?
Oh, he was a good man, a lot of stories with him. I remember one time we was going to play in Houston. You want to hear that?
I want to hear it.
And I was eating some peanuts, with a red soda water, strawberry soda water. And he was sitting in the back. He woke up, he said, somebody eat some peanuts in here? I said, well, yeah, he said, put it on the side of the road. I tell you. He said, get down and eat your peanuts. I said, no, I can throw them away. No, I said, don't throw them, just don't eat them in my van. I know he died. I never found out why, but I didn't ask him either. So.
I guess it's what we call a nut sensitivity or something.
I guess eating peanuts drove him nuts in his van.
Tell them one of my favorites about the time you decided to, on a very long gig, use the bathroom for a second.
Oh, man.
Go ahead.
Oh, man. No, okay. We go to Austin and play at Anton every month for a week. So Clifton said, well, look here. We're going to the Blue Angel and play the Monday night. I said, y'all bring your wives, you know, have a table for them. So we playing, and, you know, when Cliff stand up, it's 4 hours nonstop. Yeah. 4 hours. I never used to do that, you know. So that particular night there, he kick off a Zydeco, just the accordion, voice board, and the drum. So I look at the bass player, I say, man, let's go. I'm going to the restroom. He said, me too. So across the little railing, Cliff was playing. He didn't notice that we got off the stage. On the way back, he saw us. He stopped the band. Said, y'all too? Next time, bring y'all some buckets. Don't get off my stage at all. Oh. My wife stopped coming till she never been to another gig no more. She never came no more. But he was something else. But he was strictly about his music. You got to play, I mean, them 4 hours. If you can do it, he wants you to do it.
Strictly about the music, is that what you said?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That got that. Yep.
One more question. So her question was, this is something of a super group here, and lots of different people here have played in lots of different bands, and how much overlap is there with the different members of the group? Can we rattle off the name of some groups that have shared members here?
I did some work with Carl Withersby, Bobby Parker, Solomon Burke, Carol Fran and Clarence Holloman, Bobby Rush. Of course, a Little Buck. Of course, CC. Buckwheat. You know, Sampy and the Bad Habits. Back in Louisiana. Furnace and the Thunders. You know. Yeah. A few of these guys, you know. Not many. You know, just 2 of them. All right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have Cowboy Stew, which you've always, you know, we've had around. It's always there when you need it. It's great to come home. We hadn't seen each other in a while, some of us, so you come back and get to do this today. I have my band, the Lafayette Marquis, which Curly's in, because it's all family. We have a little band of Gold that was active for a long time and is still kind of humming around some movement in the bushes. And that was Steve and I, and Lil Buck was a member of that, an extra member of that band, played with us a lot. And I play with Steve band a lot. I've made records with Steve, and so there's all that, you know.
Well, you've already hinted at, Lafayette, one of the jewels in America for music making. A wonderful city with its own, not just one tradition, but multiple traditions of music making that overlap and bleed into one another in these kinds of groups. Well, I want to encourage everybody to come out tonight to Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar at 5 o'clock. Is that right? That's what they say. At 5 o'clock to hear Cowboy Stew Blues Revue. Unfortunately, we got to go. Let's thank the guys.